I want to talk about this, and this is Aramis Ayala. She is the state attorney here in Orange and Osceola County in the state of Florida. State Attorney Ayala, my thing is that you had an encounter with the police in Orlando where they stopped you for no reason. I saw the tape. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, so that's the one that was recorded.
Yeah.
Most Black and brown people have many encounters, multiple encounters, being stopped by police, asking them why they're in possibly their own neighborhood where they live, telling them they don't belong there. Those are experiences that I had long before the one being recorded on YouTube, long before YouTube was even a thing. So this was the one that was recorded. According to them, they ran the plates and they came back to nothing. Now, I have to be very clear. As a state attorney, I drive a state-issued vehicle, and those tags are protected. That is not a secret. So for officers to say, we run tags all the time, but I didn't know what this meant, how do you not know what that meant when there is protective? That's part of the protection. So it wasn't a secret. Now, what was probably uncomfortable is that I'm not afraid to drive through certain neighborhoods. And actually it was a shorter route for me to get to the expressway. So I went through an area that appeared to be somewhere, according to them, where I shouldn't be, which made them run the tags. When I asked them, why did you run the tags? Oh, we run tags all the time, but you didn't know what a protected tag looks like. So those are all the questions that we have now. The problem is it elevates, right? It starts with a level of harassment. Just by being who you are, walking down the street, driving down the street, and you get a level of harassment. That is a problem because that is the beginning of your inability to articulate the discomfort and the violation of your humanity, right? Your dignity. I am stopped and no one can tell me why. The harassment doesn't get the bells and whistles because there's not a dead body. But all of us know that that is a possibility when you have possibly armed and fearful law enforcement officers stopping someone who they feel threatened just by the color of their skin. That is where you start having bigger problems and you see it begin to balloon like it has. And fortunately, we're able to see video. The issue is not necessarily that we have the video. That's not always the best thing until the law changes and we deal with this concept of the subjective analysis that can ultimately justify any shooting. Until we change the dynamic by which we analyze these situations, we're going to continue having this problem.
Monique Borrell will be coming into office soon, which is great. And for everybody
Yes.
that doesn't know her, she is a true progressive, endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, endorsed by you also, and
Yes.
also endorsed by Kamala Harris, the vice presidential candidate. With her coming in, any tips for, maybe you on your way out of office, anything you're going to do as far as to try to hopefully help protect, and this is really sad that we're saying that we have to protect one citizen over another, but it's true, protect Black and brown people from not getting shot. I mean, we look back in Wisconsin of what just happened. I mean, that we have a white kid that's 17 years old with an AK-47 walking up and down the street, shooting people, and the police don't do anything. It's like a disaster. It's really scary. And, guns on and off the street is another story. But any advice for her or anything that you would do before you leave office to try to maybe, I don't know, get rid of this problem? I mean, this is insanity in this country. It's really sad.
It's all about building a team because this system cannot change. It wasn't built overnight. It cannot change overnight. All you can do is begin to implement policies that call attention to the areas where we need the change. Building a team who is speaking loud and echoing the voice of desired change for you. Being engaged in the community where people are understanding that their voices are actually heard, that they can be a part of the change and a part of the system, that it is their responsibility to hold their elected officials accountable and pushing the envelope at all costs in order to save lives. So I think Monique has this a good handle on it. We were very close. She actually launched my conviction integrity unit, did an excellent job, and her level of progress is one of the things that pushed me further in some of the directions. So finding someone more progressive than you, finding someone who stretches you, and whatever you say you want to be, you have to be around people who are more than you already are, or you will remain status quo or actually revert backwards. So I appreciate her knowing that she probably needs to even find someone more progressive than her, but being committed. She has a good handle on it, and understanding that both physical and mental health protection around her is a must. We can't deny the issues, the threats, and the things that go along, especially with being a Black female in these positions. You know, across the country, we have faced attacks that have been unprecedented. The level of physical security that is needed. I mean, I have been through litigation where someone said that I should be killed and felt they had a right to talk about me being lynched. You know, I have had a noose sent to my office. I've had multiple death threats that include my family, very young children. It becomes part of your life. So understanding that you are putting it and risking it all, that is the change that we need. We have to have people who understand what it is that they're getting into, and there is no personal interest associated with it. It is the progress of this country. It is the saving of Black and brown lives, or any lives that should be saved and protected from being lost at the hands of the state. So my advice to her is to keep pushing, communicate, build a team, and go do that thing and make the change that you promised.
Donald Trump opened up Pandora's box, and the racists are really coming out. I mean, there was racists before Donald Trump. We saw what happened to President Obama with the birth certificate. They're even using that on Kamala Harris now as a Black woman running for vice president. It's a total joke. So it's anything you want to make up about a person that you don't like, let's just use it and throw it out there and see if it sticks. It's
racism has been around. The problem is that it has been normalized, and there are no penalties for engaging in it. And it also has been misrepresented like we are in a race war. This is not Black against white. This is racism against anti-racism. So you have to choose and understand that just because you may not belong to a historically discriminated against or biased group of people doesn't mean that you don't get on the side of the anti-racist. There is no gray. There is no middle ground when it comes to racism and anti-racism. You are either for it or you are not. And if you are not blatantly speaking against it, then you are doing nothing but fueling and giving life to those who are pursuing it.
Well, also, people need to get out and vote and stop complaining and whining, and get out and vote, get out and protest, get out and call your congressmen, your senators, your anybody, your state attorney, your mayors, anybody. If you have an issue that you want to get across, you got to call them up. You just can't whine and complain and moan. So anyway.
Yeah, but the problem with that, when we have to be very honest, is
sure,
apathy is real.
Right.
And some of the goals and missions to create a more apathetic country have worked. People don't believe that their voice is heard. They don't believe that their votes count. And that is all by design. So now you have created a much more apathetic generation who are willing to do the work. They're willing to fight. They'll get out there. But the concept of your vote really matters doesn't always penetrate. They think they have to fight it through instead of sometimes just voting it through. And showing up, I mean, the young people show all the time that you showing up can change the game completely. Look at the voting numbers and the show up when President Obama showed up, right? These are all the things that we've got to do better at letting people know, not just saying get out and vote, but understanding that even if you believe that your vote doesn't count, you're making those who are trying to not make it count have to work harder. Make the people who want to hold you down work harder, and making it possibly through that, they'll get fatigued. They're counting on you to stay home, and therefore you change the game just by showing up. If everybody who said my vote doesn't count actually voted, we would have a different country.
100 million people in 2016 did not vote. So like you said, if a lot of those people came out and vote, would have been a totally different ball game. The protests going on, we see a lot of executives going in there making these laws about people protesting now, and all these permits needed. I know in general you need permits for protests regardless, but they're making it a lot harder. Do you worry about that right now? That, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's pipeline protests or economic protests, we have executives in power, whether it's in Florida or all over the country, trying to make these rules so people can't protest. And I believe that if that happens, people are going to say they're still going to go out there and protest, and we're going to see more police shootings, more police, what they did in New York. The trans woman, they threw her right in the car, unmarked vehicles. Donald Trump was doing that in Portland too. So are you worried about that also?
I'm concerned about the stifling of constitutional rights,
Mhm.
freedom of speech. And when we create laws from a place of fear, from a place of control versus a place of access and freedom, we have lost our way. So I am more concerned, not necessarily about the laws, but where these laws are coming from. The spirit behind them is a dangerous place to be.
Can you speak about going through cancer and outlasting it and how hard of a fight it was?
Yeah, I was in law school when I had a tumor growing in my neck, suffocating me. I was 24 hours from death before I got to the ER, started chemotherapy, but I ended up having to sit out of law school for a year. That process made me understand the value of life and purpose. And whether or not you accept it, that doesn't make it untrue because you don't believe it. Everybody has a purpose, and the value of life has got to be held as something as sacred. So when I believe that, God spared my life, it became much more meaningful for me, and for me then to understand and cherish other people's lives, which is how I function. The truth is, we all are going to die. And what your fingerprint on this earth while you were here says speaks volumes for what your life actually stood for. And we write our eulogy every day that we are living and everything that we get involved in. So it is up to us. And I have lived that way by trying to make it easy for whoever eulogizes me, right? I'm trying to write the story where someone doesn't have to write it for me, determining what I want my legacy to be, determining what, that hash mark, right? When you go to the cemetery, you've got a number here and a number here, but the truth is all that matters is what happened in between. And if you think that you cannot change the world, or if you think that you can, you're right. So understanding that you literally are the master of your own destiny, I believe that, and I will fight until my last breath, knowing that there's good to be done in this world.
We haven't even finished the interview. You are so inspiring, and we've only been through half of it. I mean, truly, I've never heard you speak, for this long, because I don't fully live in that area. But you
Yeah.
are truly inspiring so far, and I just have a few more questions. I really appreciate this, and it does
Thank
mean a
you.
lot. Let's talk about this. What was the toughest or hardest case that you've presided over?
So in prosecuting cases, every case is difficult. A lot of times some get media attention, some get, public outcry. But if a prosecutor is doing his or her job, they are all equally difficult because your ultimate goal is justice. And you literally have to draw a mental picture of justice every single time you handle a case. There are some that are very easy. I do consider myself progressive, but I'm not to the extent that some people. I do believe in timeouts, right? I don't believe in how our prison system is set up. I don't think that we do an effective job or even any job as it relates to reentry. But when people are destroying communities, when people are running around with firearms, we can't fight it, and then justify it. Either we are for guns or we're against guns. I am against them in most circumstances. I understand there's a lot of gray area there, but at the end of the day, guns are often pose a danger that ends up in death. So when we talk about the work that we do, when we talk about it being easy or hard, there is no way, because people have already been hurt. And we don't have a right to restore. I shouldn't say we don't have a right. We often don't have the tools to restore people. So we just have to craft what we believe is the most just outcome, knowing that someone is not going to be made whole. When a family member is killed, I can't bring that person back to life. So how do I make you whole? What does justice look like? When a young girl has been, molested, or a woman has been raped, what makes her whole? I cannot give her her innocence back. So crafting justice is a daily responsibility, starting back at square one. So just the job of being a prosecutor, if you're one from the heart and understand that your job is about justice and not necessarily a conviction, then I can tell you the toughest part, or the toughest case, is every single one, because defining justice is difficult every single time.
Thank you for saying that. I want to talk about this. We know that there was a big issue with the former governor, now the senator, unfortunately, Rick Scott. Just my opinion. I'm sorry, I got to say it out there. I'm not a fan at all of, especially what he's done with unemployment and how I feel like he wrecked the state in general. But Senator Scott, Senator Scott now, but at the time when he had this issue with you was the governor with the death penalty cases. Can you give the audience a brief overview about that and what was, why you were against that?
Yes. When I took office, I am very honest with everyone. I was not anti-death penalty. As an assistant state attorney, you are trained in a culture to believe that the highest penalty is what you should pursue. And under the law, it was death penalty in the state of Florida. So when you see repeat things, or when you see egregious, aggravating circumstances, your thought is, oh, maybe this is death penalty. When I took office, or actually while I was running for office, let's correct some of the misrepresentations. Death penalty was unconstitutional, the process by which we seek death penalty. It had been declared unconstitutional twice in less than 2 years by both the United States Supreme Court and the Florida Supreme Court. And when I took office, it was still unconstitutional. They had determined that you needed a unanimous verdict for any death sentences, which meant that all cases that were not made final, that did not have unanimous verdicts, had to come back and get a resentencing. I walked into office with more than 24 cases, some from 1970s, some from the 80s, many from the 90s, that it was my responsibility to call these families back and say, hey, that death sentence that you thought everything was over, we have to go back to court to try to get a death sentence. And to me, there was a level of just inherent injustice in that, because we're making final decisions on something that is not final. The law on death penalty has never been final. It's never been settled. However, we are actually taking lives. And with Florida leading in exonerations, with us having constant issues in how we pursue the death penalty, my job pursuing justice, I had concerns about the ability to pursue justice in the state that the law was, in particular, its unconstitutionality. Once it had been rewritten, it didn't change the dynamic and the impact of it. And I decided, after looking at the research that talked about us spending $50 million more on death penalty cases, when we talked about the lack of closure and the mental health impact, when we talk about this hierarchy of victims, because some people say, oh, well, if you kill someone, you should be killed. Most homicides do not get the death penalty. So you set up this idea where, well, you know what, your family member was killed in the right way, so you're going to get it. Yours was dead, but they weren't killed in the right way, so we're not going to pursue death. This whole concept is just off. You look at the racial disparities as it relates to the death penalty. There are so many issues that when you do the research and you look at it being a lack of deterrent, the only reason we do is because we can. And for me, that is not leadership. That is nothing but passing the buck and the status quo maintaining while people are literally dying, while we are killing people and justifying it. There is no justice. And I made a decision that until we could change some of those things, which we probably never could, that I was not going to pursue death penalty. The governor believed that, that I had overstepped my boundaries, that I did not have discretion to do so. And he took the cases away from me. I sued. The Florida Supreme Court sided with the governor and indicated that he did have a right to take the cases. What I always find curious is that the majority opinion was much shorter than the dissenting opinion, which understood the area from which I was speaking and making my decision. So that's how we ended up with death penalty. I then made a a death penalty review panel. They reviewed it, and I don't consider it a function of my will or my desire, but a function of the Supreme Court's ruling.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, State Attorney, but my thing is that we have so many people that we found out that they've been placed on death row in different states, and come to find out they are innocent of the crime. And some of them have been put to death, and they were innocent of the crime. And some of those people have been spared, that death sentence, and actually they've, got that prison sentence taken care of. So my thing is, if we're putting people to death like that, and we don't know all the full information, or the state, or rather the issues were from the 80s, like you said, or the 90s, this case happened. How are you going to get that evidence back? It's crazy. Am I just incorrect here?
You are not incorrect. It is problematic on so many levels because the law, like I said, is evolving. The law from 1976 is not what it is in 2020. However, we have killed people when the law has changed, and we're spending enormous amounts of money in order to kill people. And that goes all back to not just the humanity of the people we're killing, but our own. That is a different mindset that allows you just to say, yes, I'm going to start the wheels of death rolling. I'm signing my signature, and I say that we can kill this person. I mean, who are you, right? That is just a level of arrogance, control, and inhumanity in and of itself to proceed in that manner.
Right. I want to talk.
People who talk about, oh, that person did such an egregious act, they deserve to die. We can talk about that all in, all our conjecture, but in this seat, there's only one person whose signature who actually brings it to life, and I didn't take that lightly.
Right. Thank you for that. I want to go on to Amendment 4. We know the struggles of what's going on with that. And I remember seeing you and your husband on the news that he was able to get the vote, and he wasn't able to vote for you when you ran for office. With that said, what did he get? Is he able to vote now? Because I know there's all these crazy issues of fines now. I know John Legend has came out and he's helping people pay fines. I know Desmond Meade has a big organization where he's helping people. I think they raised I don't know if it was $700,000 or maybe $1 million, something to that effect.
The fines.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's going on with this now?
So I think that it's important for us to understand that despite all of the legislation that was proposed in order to limit what the people voted on in 2018 for the restoring of the rights of those who had prior felony convictions, there are a lot of people who have had their fines paid off. The issue has to do with Florida not having a universal system to determine what fines are actually outstanding. So there are people who may think that they have their fines paid off, but come to find out they don't. And that the way that the law has been set up, do you prosecute that? Do you not prosecute that? It becomes extremely difficult to prove a level of knowledge that a person was intentionally attempting to avoid their responsibility of paying off their fine. So we're in a place now where a lot of people's rights have been restored. There are a lot of organizations who are helping to raise money so that those whose rights are not restored because of fines, those are being paid off. And it is my hope by the last date of registration to vote for this 2020 election, we have enough people who are able to vote and willing to vote in what I believe is the right way.
Well, my thing is, and you are a lawyer, so you would have a better answer than me, is I believe this is a poll tax. I mean, straight out of the book of the 1950s, 60s, even before that, if you have a and you know what? They make it, and this makes them sound racist if they're saying, oh, well, the people aren't going to vote for us. So they're making them say it like, that's like, oh, black people, brown people. There's white people that are criminals too, that, that have to pay the same tax, that they may vote for you guys. They may vote Democrat. Who knows who they're going to vote for. So it's this generalization. Go ahead.
It's constantly voter suppression. I mean,
right.
Like I still have not had anyone properly articulate why being convicted of a felony lands you in a place where you're not able to vote. What's the nexus? other than voter suppression. It's another way. Mass incarceration tends to us, goes to us increasing the level of crimes. We have many more things that are found that are felonies than years before, which has contributed significantly to mass incarceration, which means you balloon the amount of people who have felony conviction, which means you limit the amount of people who can engage in voting. So what is the articulable reason other than you don't want people to vote? Now that is absolutely concerning. It is un-American, it is undemocratic, and quite frankly, it is unjust. The goal is to get more people involved in our government. All the numbers, research, and statistics say that a person's involvement in their civic involvement reduces recidivism. So if we're really worried about concepts of safety, we have to be mindful of how we handle people who have been engaging in crime and how we help pull them out of it and establish a way of living both through reentry and the ability to re-engage in their communities.
But if we do have policemen that are white supremacists in the police force, then how do we have police reform? How do we, get these criminal justice reforms in place, even if they're done in the Florida House, the Florida Senate, and signed by the governor, if the police aren't gonna, abide by that? Or if a policeman shoots somebody, they get paid time off. That's like a vacation. I mean, you shoot and kill somebody, you get a vacation that's paid. What kind of joke is that?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very complicated. I think, unfortunately, we have simplified it in a way that has allowed them to make it more difficult, right? Mm-hmm. What we have to be mindful of is police culture. There is this whole conversation about good police versus bad police, and I've written about it, I've talked about it, and it has absolutely nothing to do with good versus bad police. The dominant police culture has a history that should not surprise us, that the good police officers, their work is often suffocated. It doesn't have a lifeline to it because of the culture. So instead of constantly attacking the police and the individuals, we have got to deal with the culture that pacifies misconduct, the culture that pacifies and justifies killing innocent, unarmed people, that justifies using racially charged rhetoric and having conversations. We have got to get down to the root issue, which is the culture and not necessarily the people.
Last question. I know you're not going to answer this, but will you run for office again?
I think you have to, I put it this way. Once you've dived into the fight, there's no way back, right? You're in the middle of the sea. The only question is on where do you continue to fight? Do you fight in academia? Do you remain, in a political platform? Do you create your own? What do you do? And if I didn't have more work to be done over the next few months, I would have time to focus on that. But I'm not finished. I still have 4 more months. There's programs, diversion programs that I want to set up to make certain that they last in perpetuity.
Well, I'm saying it because we need somebody that's progressive, such as yourself, somebody that's inspiring, somebody that's going to get things done. And I'm not trying to blow you up. I'm trying to tell the truth. You are a person that gets things done. And in a government like Florida, we've seen throughout the COVID crisis, the unemployment crisis, and everything else that's going on, there's a lot of people in Tallahassee that don't get anything done. So that's why I asked you that question, because we need people like you in political office to get more things done.
Thank you.
Last thing before we end the interview, and this is State Attorney Aramis Ayala. She's in Osceola in Orange County. What do you have planned for the next 4 months? I know you kind of stated a little bit in the last answer. Can you tell the viewers before we go?
Yeah, I think that we have to continue to look at the issues of protest, peaceful protests, and how we're handling those. Are there possible diversion programs? Those are things. I don't know that I'll be able to get the suspended license off the ground because it requires a lot of partners. Looking at some sealing and expungement issues. We got to do something about the police shootings that we can do. A lot of times people put the onus on the prosecutor, but a prosecutor can only work within the realms of the legally established precedent and or laws. So it makes it extremely difficult when you have people who are leaning on you and desiring for you to make change, and your hands are still tied because of the legislative process and laws. So just continuing to fight the good fight, and raising the standard of prosecutorial accountability, redefining justice, and constantly speaking for the people.
Thank you for everything you do, State
Yeah.
Attorney. I really hope that the fight is not over. I know you have 4 months left, but after that, we definitely need you in office doing something, because
Thank
it's
you.
really important to have, like I said, inspiring people like you.